Okay, imagine this scenario. You drop your car off at the shop, right? A place you generally trust. Maybe it's just for an oil change, maybe something bigger like brakes. You leave the keys, you walk away, feeling pretty okay about it. But then, maybe a few hours later, you get that phone call. Hi. Yeah, we've had a small incident here with your vehicle. Oh, or, you know, flip that around. Maybe you run the auto shop and one of your best techs, totally reliable usually, just makes an honest mistake. What happens then? Legally, where do you stand or where does the customer stand? Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we're looking into something really crucial for, well, pretty much anyone who owns a car or runs an auto repair shop. We're talking about the legal liabilities of mechanics and what this phrase duty of care actually means in practice. We'll cover everything from, say, an accidental scratch on the paint to much more serious repair failures that could even be dangerous. Our mission today, give you a shortcut, get you well informed on this area that honestly most people don't think about until something goes wrong. Let's get into it.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome to ShopTalk, the podcast where auto repair pros get real insights to grow smarter, run smoother, and boost profit.
We're pulling out the key bits of knowledge from our source materials so you could protect yourself, protect your business, and just understand your rights better. We're looking at the topic, can mechanics be sued for damages in 2025?
Yeah, and what's quite fascinating, or maybe concerning, depending on your perspective, is how often these sort of unintentional mistakes, small slip-ups, can actually spiral. They can lead to pretty serious liability issues. We're not just talking lawsuits, though that's part of it. It hits everything. Insurance premiums, the shop's reputation in the community, customer trust. It's all interconnected. So this episode, it's going to help us understand not just what the liabilities are, but really why they matter so much.
Exactly. So let's start right at the core, the big question. Is a mechanic actually responsible legally for damage that happens while the car's in their shop? And the short answer, based on our source, is a pretty clear yes. Mechanics and the shop owners, they have this fundamental legal obligation. It's called duty of care. Yeah, maybe think of it like this. When you hire any professional, a doctor, say, or an accountant, or, a mechanic, you expect a certain level of skill, right? And a certain diligence. You wouldn't expect your surgeon to use, rusty tools. Well, similarly, a mechanic has a duty to perform their services to what's called a reasonable standard. Basically what you'd expect from a competent professional in that field. If their work doesn't meet that standard, and it causes damage or injury or some kind of loss, then yes, they, and usually the shop itself, are legally liable.
And that idea actually gets
Yes?
broadened a bit further because, legally speaking, your car, when it's in the shop's care, is considered entrusted property. Yeah, that's a specific legal term. It means the moment you hand over those keys, the shop takes on a pretty significant... They have to protect that vehicle. Protect it from damage, yes, but also misuse, theft, even loss. And I think what many folks don't fully grasp are the wide-ranging consequences if they fail in that duty. It's not just, oh, we have to pay for a new bumper. Sure, there could be expensive lawsuits, but it can also mean your insurance premiums go way up. Your shop's reputation can take a serious hit. You might face investigations from regulatory bodies. In really bad cases, maybe even lose your license to operate. So it's a very serious responsibility. It touches every single part of the business.
That's a huge point. It's definitely not just a casual handshake agreement then.
No.
Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting, both if you're a customer trying to figure out your rights or if you're a shop owner trying to, stay out of trouble. Let's lay out some key legal terms that come up again and again in these situations. Let's break down a few of the main ones. First up, and probably the most common reason for claims, is negligence, right? Now, we all kind of think we know what negligence means, like being careless. But what might surprise some shop owners is it's not just about making a blatant mistake. It can also be about failing to anticipate risks, even small ones, that a reasonable professional should have considered.
That's exactly right. It boils down to a failure to exercise the proper care that a reasonable person, or more specifically, a reasonable mechanic, would use in the same situation. And that failure then leads directly to some kind of damage or harm. So, yeah, maybe leaving a wrench on the fender that scratches the paint, that could be negligence. Wasn't intentional, obviously, but it was preventable with just, basic care. And this often connects to another big one: unauthorized repairs. This is huge. It's where shops can easily run into trouble with consumer protection laws, basically doing work without getting clear, explicit permission beforehand.
So, like if I bring my car in just for an oil change and the mechanic sees my brake pads look a bit worn and just replaces them without calling me first, and then adds it to the bill, that's unauthorized.
Absolutely. That is a textbook example, or say deciding to do a transmission flush because they think it's a good idea, but they never discussed it with you or got your okay. Lots of states have really specific laws about this. It's seen as a breach of trust, and yeah, it carries legal risk, which ties into breach of contract as well. This happens when the services you both agreed on aren't actually delivered, or maybe the quality of the work just isn't up to par. Like if the contract, the estimate you signed, specified OEM parts, original manufacturer parts, and the shop used cheaper aftermarket parts without telling you or getting your consent, that could be a breach of contract.
Okay, that makes total sense. And
Yeah.
you mentioned earlier when you hand over the keys, that
Mm.
whole interaction. Our source talks about something called bailment. What's that about?
Right. Bailment. It sounds a bit formal, but it's just the legal term for the relationship that gets created in that moment. You, the customer, are the bailer. You temporarily give your property, the car, to the shop who becomes the bailee. And the law says that bailee, the shop, has a legal duty to protect that property while it's in their possession. Think of it like, yeah, you're trusting them with your maybe very expensive property. That act creates this bailment. They have to safeguard it reasonably. Now, that's different from conversion, which is much more serious. Conversion is when a shop basically acts like they own the customer's property, they keep it for their own benefit, maybe use it without permission, or refuse to return it. That's stepping way over the line into potentially criminal territory.
Wow, okay. And then there's one more term that just sounds bad: deceptive trade practice.
Yeah, it is pretty much what it sounds like. This covers things like a mechanic misrepresenting what repairs are actually needed, or giving false information about the repairs themselves, or the costs, or maybe the warranty that comes with the work. Telling a customer they need a whole new engine when really it's just a faulty sensor. That's deceptive. Or maybe promising a 5-year warranty on a part when they know full well the manufacturer only covers it for 1 year. That's playing games, and it's legally risky for the shop.
So, yeah, putting it all together, understanding these terms: negligence, unauthorized repairs, breach of contract, bailment, conversion, deceptive practices, it really is the first step. Whether you're a customer needing to assert your rights or you're a shop owner trying to run a tight ship and avoid these problems, knowing this language is foundational.
Exactly. They form the basis of most legal disputes in this area. Not knowing them leaves you vulnerable whichever side you're on.
Okay, so let's make this more concrete. Let's look at some real-world scenarios, examples from the source material that can actually trigger these kinds of liabilities. These aren't just abstract legal ideas. They happen probably more often than we think. Let's start with direct damage during the repair process itself. What kind of common slip-ups lead to trouble?
Oh, the list can be long, unfortunately. We've probably all heard stories, maybe even experienced something minor. It could be something as simple, relatively speaking, as an accidental scratch on the paint when a tech is taking off a bumper. Maybe they're rushing, not careful enough. Or more seriously, maybe one employee is backing another customer's car out of a bay and bumps into your car that's waiting. Uh-huh. Then there's damage you might not see right away, dropping a tool or a small part into the engine bay, causing some kind of unforeseen internal damage later on, or maybe mishandling a battery, letting it tip, spilling corrosive acid that damages the hood paint. These are all direct results of actions taken, or maybe carelessness during the repair. Clear liability.
And sometimes, like you hinted, the problem isn't obvious right away. It's more like a ticking time bomb because the repair itself was faulty. What's the pattern with faulty repairs?
Yeah, the co-common thread there is that the repair work itself just wasn't up to professional standards. It failed that duty of care we talked about earlier. And what's often, well, quite shocking, is how a seemingly small oversight can lead to catastrophic failure down the road. Our source gives some pretty stark examples, like incorrectly installed brake pads. They might seem okay at first, but then they fail suddenly, causing a serious crash.
Oh, wow.
Or using the wrong type of oil filter, or maybe just not putting enough oil in during an oil change, which eventually leads to the engine seizing up completely. And maybe one of the scariest ones, wheels literally falling off a car because the lug nuts weren't torqued correctly after a simple tire rotation. It really is. And this is
That's
where the legal
terrifying.
system tends to come down hardest because people's safety, their lives, are directly at risk. And here's a crucial point the source makes. In these faulty repair cases, often the burden of proof shifts to the shop. They have to be able to demonstrate with documentation that they followed all the correct industry standards and procedures. If they can't prove it, they're likely facing severe consequences.
It completely changes the dynamic, doesn't it? Okay, another common trigger mentioned is extra or unauthorized work. It feels like it should be simple, just don't do work you weren't asked to do, but it must happen often enough to be a major point.
It does, and sometimes it's not malicious. Maybe a technician genuinely thinks they're helping the customer by fixing something else they noticed, or there's a misunderstanding about what approval really means. We already mentioned the classic examples like throwing in a transmission flush or replacing brake pads without getting that specific okay first. But it can also be things like charging for extra hours of labor that weren't on the original estimate, or maybe diagnostic fees that weren't agreed upon upfront. The article is very clear. Deviating from those signed estimates or repair orders without documented authorization opens the door to lawsuits, things like customer fraud claims or deceptive practices. It's an easy trap if communication isn't absolutely crystal clear and documented.
Right. Documentation again. Okay, what about security? That's another angle. It seems like it goes beyond just, locking the shop at night. What kind of theft or vandalism can make a shop liable?
Yeah, many shop owners think about preventing the whole car from being stolen, which important, of course, but liability is broader. It includes theft from the vehicle. So if a customer's stereo system gets stolen while the car is on the lot, or personal items disappear from the glove box, or say the car gets vandalized, spray painted, tire slashed because it was parked in a poorly lit, unmonitored area of the shop's property overnight. And something that's maybe a bit more modern and insidious, the possibility of key fobs being duplicated while in the shop's possession, and then used later to steal the car or things from it.
Wow, hadn't even thought of that one.
Shops are legally expected to take reasonable precautions. That means things like having decent lighting, security cameras, maybe an alarm system, secure key storage, locked gates after hours. If they fail to take those reasonable steps and something happens, that failure can be deemed negligence.
And it's not just about active damage or theft. Sometimes just where and how the car is stored can cause problems, right? Talk about wrong storage and environmental damage.
Exactly. This is where a lack of planning or just carelessness about the surroundings can lead straight back to negligence. Think about a bad hailstorm rolling through. If a customer's car gets pummeled with hail damage because it was left parked outside when there was available covered space inside the shop, that's likely the shop's liability. Or maybe the shop has known drainage problems, and after a heavy rain, the parking lot floods, damaging vehicles left there. It could even be something like paint damage caused by chemical fumes or overspray from work being done nearby in the shop if the customer's car wasn't properly covered or moved. These are all scenarios where the shop failed in its duty to protect that entrusted property simply by not managing the storage environment correctly or considering foreseeable risks.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? How many of these issues, from a simple scratch to a seized engine, could potentially be avoided with just clear communication up front, maybe a bit more foresight and really solid internal procedures?
That's the key takeaway, I think. Each example really highlights a breakdown somewhere along the line in that core duty of care. It shows that liability often doesn't stem from deliberate wrongdoing, but more from simple oversight. A lapse in following procedures, maybe rushing or just cutting corners.
Okay, so let's say despite your best efforts and procedures, something does go wrong. A technician makes a mistake. A car gets damaged. What's the right way for a shop to respond? It's not just about fixing the immediate problem, is it? It's also about managing the fallout, keeping the customer's trust, and mitigating the legal risk. Our source actually lays out a pretty clear framework for this.
It does, and it's really a practical roadmap, not just for damage control, but like you said, for reputation management, too. Step one, according to the article, is crucial. Acknowledge the problem immediately. Don't try to downplay it, don't deny it happened, just own up to it straight away. Yes, something happened while your vehicle was in our care. And, critically important, document absolutely everything right then and there. Take photos of the damage, write down detailed notes from the technician involved. Check for any relevant timestamp security footage. This isn't about assigning blame internally at that moment. It's purely about establishing the facts objectively.
That documentation piece seems to come up again and again. Yeah. Okay, so you've acknowledged it, you've documented it. What's next?
The next step is to inspect the vehicle again. Now, that might sound a bit redundant, but the idea is to get a fresh, maybe more senior perspective. Have a senior technician or maybe the shop manager carefully inspect the damage. Even better, if feasible, suggest involving a neutral third-party appraiser for a completely transparent assessment. This helps build trust with the customer, showing you're taking it seriously and want an objective view. It's about really understanding the full scope of the damage.
Okay, makes sense. Then, once you know exactly what the damage is, you have to figure out how to make it right for the customer.
Precisely. Step 3 is to give a solution. You need to offer fair compensation or a clear plan to rectify the issue. This could take different forms depending on the situation. Maybe it's a full refund for the original repair work. Maybe it's redoing the faulty repair correctly at no extra cost. Or, if it's physical damage, it likely means paying to have that damage repaired properly, perhaps at another reputable shop of the customer's choosing. You might also need to cover the cost of a rental car while their vehicle is out of commission. The key is to discuss the options with the customer and come to an agreement. And once again, document that agreed upon solution. Get it in writing, have the customer sign off on it. That paper trail is vital.
And then there's the insurance aspect. When does that come into play?
Right after you have that documented agreement with the customer, or perhaps even concurrently while figuring out the solution, step 4 is get your liability insurance carrier on board. You need to file a claim promptly. Provide them with all the detailed information you've gathered, the photos, the technician's notes, the customer agreement, everything. Cooperate fully with the insurance adjuster when they investigate. That insurance policy is there for exactly these situations, but you have to give them the ammo they need to process the claim efficiently.
Okay. And the source mentions one final step even after the claim is filed and the repair is done.
Yes, step 5 is follow up with the customer. Don't just fix the problem and disappear. Give them a call, maybe a day or two after they've got their car back or the resolution is complete. Just check in, make sure they're satisfied with how things were going. This isn't just good customer service, it's the final touch on managing the whole unfortunate experience. As a gesture of goodwill, the source suggests maybe offering a discount on a future service. It shows you value their business despite the mishap. This whole framework, really, it's as much about communication and relationship management as it is about strict legal compliance. Handled well, it can actually strengthen customer loyalty in the long run.
It really can turn a negative into a, well, maybe not a positive, but a situation where the customer feels heard and respected. And that rule of thumb just keeps popping up. Document everything, every conversation, every agreement, texts, emails, and definitely those signed estimates. That paper trail is your absolute best defense. Okay, so that's how to react when things go wrong. But obviously the goal is to avoid these situations altogether. What can shop owners do proactively to minimize liability and build that strong customer trust from the get-go? Our source gives us 8 pretty solid tactics. Let's dive into those.
Yeah, this is really where the focus should be. Prevention is always better and cheaper than cure. These aren't just about covering your legal bases, they're fundamentally about running a better, more professional business. First up, and we've touched on this, but it bears repeating, record and sign estimates. Every single estimate, even if it's just for a diagnostic check, needs to be written down clearly and signed by the customer before any work starts. And crucially, if any additional work comes up during the repair, you need a new separate authorization for that specific job. No assumptions.
Okay, solidifies that unauthorized work point. What about the condition of the car when it first rolls into the shop?
Good point. That leads directly to tactic number 2, detailed checklists and reports. Implement standardized forms for both pre-repair inspection and post-repair inspection. Use these to meticulously log any existing scratches, dents, dings, warning lights on the dash, anything notable about the vehicle's condition before your team even touches it. This protects everyone. It prevents the shop from being blamed for damage that was already there, and it assures the customer that you're paying attention. Simple, but so effective.
The quality of the work ultimately comes down to the people doing it. How does that fit into prevention?
Absolutely central. Tactic 3 is verify employee training and qualifications. Make sure your technicians have the necessary certifications for the work they're doing, like ASE certifications. But don't stop there. Provide ongoing training, especially with how fast car technology changes. What shops sometimes miss is that the legal expectation isn't just that they were certified once, but that their skills are current. Outdated knowledge can lead straight to faulty repairs and negligence claims.
Makes sense. We also talked about parts earlier. What's the preventative angle there?
Right. Tactic 4, use OEM or certified parts. Or if you plan to use aftermarket parts, you absolutely must communicate that clearly to the customer beforehand. And just saying aftermarket isn't always enough. Briefly explain the potential differences in quality, warranty, or fit, and get their explicit approval to use them. Transparency about parts avoids misunderstandings and potential breach of contract claims later.
Okay. And with all these checks and procedures, having proof seems like it would be invaluable.
Couldn't agree more. Which brings us to tactic 5. Maintain a photo-video repository for proof. Get in the habit of taking clear, time-stamped photos or even short videos of every vehicle when it arrives. Capture the exterior from all angles, the dashboard showing mileage and warning lights, the odometer reading, and any specific areas related to the planned repair. Store these images securely with the customer's record. You can even show them to the customer along with the estimate. This visual record is incredibly powerful if any disputes about condition or damage arise later. It removes ambiguity.
Seems like a small effort for potentially huge protection. And of course, insurance is key.
Definitely. Tactic 6, carry strong shop liability insurance. Don't just assume your basic business policy covers everything. You need specific coverage for customer vehicles while in your care. That's often called garage keeper's liability, protection against fire and theft, and very importantly, errors and omissions. E&O coverage, which specifically addresses claims arising from faulty workmanship or mistakes. And don't just get a policy and forget about it. Review it annually with your insurance agent to make sure the coverage limits are adequate and that it reflects the current risks in your business.
Good advice. What about just clearly stating the rules and expectations for customers?
That's tactic 7. Use clear disclaimers and maintain open communication. Have clear signage posted in your customer waiting area and on your estimates regarding things like warranty limitations, storage fees for vehicles left too long, or shop policies on personal items left in cars. But it's more than just signs. Practice proactive, transparent communication throughout the repair process. Keep the customer updated on timelines, especially if there are delays. Explain any unexpected complications clearly. Good communication prevents small issues from escalating.
And the final tactic seems to bring it all together, focusing on the shop's internal environment.
Exactly. Tactic 8 is all about fostering a culture of accountability. This means creating a work environment where technicians feel comfortable, even obligated to report any issues or mistakes immediately without fear of unfair blame. It means making quality control a standard part of every repair process. Maybe having a second tech double-check critical work. It's less about specific rules and more about building a shared mindset where everyone on the team understands the importance of care, precision, and honesty, and feels responsible for upholding those standards. That culture is probably the strongest preventative measure of all.
Looking at all those 8 points, it really drives home that this isn't just about avoiding lawsuits. Not at all. These are fundamentally about running a professional, trustworthy, and ultimately more successful business. They build that customer confidence we keep talking about.
That's the connection. Absolutely. They demonstrate a commitment to doing things right, transparency. That's what builds invaluable customer trust and loyalty. And in the long run, that protects your reputation and your bottom line far more effectively than just reacting to problems after they happen. A proactive approach really is the smart business approach here.
So, wrapping this up, this episode really highlights that auto repair liability isn't some abstract legal concept. It's a real everyday business risk. But the good news is, it's a risk that can be managed very effectively. It takes proactive systems, well-informed staff who understand the responsibilities, and maybe most importantly, that culture of transparency and accountability.
Couldn't have said it better. Whether you're listening as a car owner trying to understand your rights and what reasonable expectations are, or you're a shop owner looking to strengthen your operations and protect your business. Just knowing about concepts like duty of care, negligence, bailment, and understanding these preventative steps really empowers you. It lets you navigate the whole auto repair process with a lot more confidence and hopefully a lot less risk.
So here's a final thought to leave you with. Given everything we've discussed today, all the nuances around duty of care, negligence, authorized work, the importance of documentation. Think about your next interaction with auto repair, whether you're the one handing over the keys or the one taking them. What specific aspect of that experience will you approach differently now, armed with this duper understanding? That's all for this episode. Thanks for tuning in to Shop Talk by ShopOfficer. If you found this helpful, share it with a friend, a fellow mechanic, or shop owner, and follow for more real-world advice. Want to take your shop digital? Visit shopofficer.com to get started for free. Until next time, keep wrenching smarter.
1, 2,